Someone sent me a video the other day, one of my guides, of a hunter who'd killed an animal. And so it was a picture with the animal. And they sent a video and they plugged it into AI. And all of a sudden, this animal just stands up and turns and takes off walking away from and it was like a 30-second deal and it looks perfect. Like you can't tell it's fake, which worries me a little because I'm like, how are we going to know what's real anymore? You know what I mean? Half the stuff you see, Joe can make on AI in a minute. Like how do we know what's going to be real and what's not anymore?
This episode is brought to you by Pierre Tax and Accounting, led by CPA Eric Pierre, a seasoned accounting and tax expert with years of experience helping individuals and businesses navigate complex financial landscapes. Whether you need personal tax planning, business tax strategy, bookkeeping, or financial planning support, Eric and his team are committed to helping you protect and grow your financial future with clarity and confidence. To get expert guidance you can trust, check out Pierre Tax and Accounting at pierreaccounting.com. This episode is brought to you by my friend Silas Lagoy over at ForgeMark Wealth. If you're a high-income business owner or professional and feel like you're getting crushed by taxes, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not stuck. ForgeMark Wealth specializes in advanced legal tax strategies and wealth planning designed to help you keep more of what you make, grow it efficiently, and actually build long-term freedom, not just income. If you're making serious money but don't have a real strategy behind it yet, I highly recommend connecting with Silas and his team. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Hitters Podcast. I'm joined by Cory Pritchard, who's a buddy of mine from Rise Up Kings. And before we hopped on here, Cory was just walking me through his different enterprises between construction, agriculture. You have an agricultural business, you said, and then a hunting business, a hunting and fishing and guiding business. So, Cory, I guess as you were talking right before we hopped on, man, I was like, how the heck do you have those types of, those are completely different businesses in my mind, but I'm sure in some way, shape, or form they're related. Like, how did you get into those three industries?
Honestly, they're not really related. So I'm just one of those people that can't say no. So kind of ends up down that path. So I started. I had a hay business. I can remember I was probably 16 years old and I needed a job, and I went to one of the companies in town, like feed stores in town, and applied for a job, and they didn't give it to me because they said I was too small to move hay. And at the time, my cousin's like, "Oh man, you should just start doing it yourself." So he helped me, and I'd leave. We live in Prescott, Arizona, and I'd leave home at like 2 o'clock in the morning with my dad's borrowed truck and a trailer borrowed from someone else. And I'd drive to Phoenix, which is like a 2-hour drive, and they'd load it with hay. And then I'd drive back up and I'd go to high school for the day. And then I'd sit on the side of the road with a cardboard sign after high school when I got out of school for the rest of the day until the hay was all sold. And then when it was all sold, I'd do it all again another day. And so I kind of started into that and grew it up pretty big. And then about the time I was graduating college, I sold it to one of my competitors. I say pretty big. I was a one-man show, pretty big for a one-man show. But I sold it to one of my competitors and stepped away from it at that time. And then I've always liked hunting. So at that time, I kind of was like, fresh out of college. I graduated college in '08, so bottom of everything, there wasn't a whole lot going on. So I just went to guiding. Kind of, I had a guy I knew offered me a job doing some pretty cool hunts, and so I did that for about a year or two, kind of just living the life of a single kid, fresh out of college. And then when stuff started coming back a little more, my dad had a drywall business, and then he ended up going into the supply side. So in '09, he bought out a location for the supply side they closed 40 locations all at once. And so he bought out their assets and the inventory, and we started a company called Rockwise. And so at that time, I kept doing the guiding, but I came back to work for him some. My degree's in business management, so I kind of hopped in with him. And when we first took that company over, they were doing about 100,000 in sales a month, so about 1.2 million a year. And we sold that company, I want to say it was probably about 7 years later, and we had 3 locations at that time, and we're doing 32 million in sales a year. through that company. So it grew pretty fast, and it was a good one for me. I learned a lot, like, I mean, you think you learn stuff in college, but I learned a lot in that, especially with
Mm.
that growth pattern. And, we had close to 100 employees in the end and everything, and 2 states and stuff. So it was a good one for us. So I did a lot with that. And then when we sold, it sold to a big corporation. They were going public right at the time. It was private equity, and then they were going public right when they bought us out. And it took me about a month to realize I wasn't corporate. It didn't work for me and stuff. So I gave them about 3 months to get the transition over, and then resigned. And when I did that, I had a buddy. Well, the guy who bought my first hay business actually was struggling, and he kept coming to me and saying, "Hey, why am I struggling? What's going on?" And I kept telling him kind of what to do, kind of giving him advice based on what I knew in it, and he didn't do it. And so when we sold out of the building supply, which my dad owned, I just helped him manage. I went back into the hay business because I knew it and had the time, and the market was there. So I kind of started that back up. And then that kind of morphed into what we call Hay Plus Farms now, which is one of my companies. And I combined with a guy I knew that we're partners with now. So we're 50-50 in it. And we've got a 5-acre facility. And so we do everything from retail, a lot of retail, ladies, horse people wanting 5-10 bales, all the way up to we handle huge ranch accounts, and actually even feed stores in other states, things like that. We do a bunch of farrier supplies, fencing supplies, custom welding, things like that. We've got a welding division that we're starting with it, where we're building some custom trailers for the off-road industry, and everything kind of tied in there. But we have everything. We have what we call a wholesale side, where pretty much we're going straight from the farms to end users, in bulk quantities, semi quantities. And then we have the retail side of that. And so we started kind of building that up. And as kind of to step back, I kept guiding throughout the time that we had Rockwise, but just not as much. So in that time frame, I ended up buying the company I was working for there, which had a large private ranch that we hunted and everything. So I kind of took that over. And then when I got out of Rockwise, I was able to get back into even more guiding for a time frame, and expanded that company pretty well. We kind of backed off on the number of hunts we were doing, but we increased the quality. So expanded revenue, decreased volume, I guess you could say, off of it. And that's kind of just been with me forever. It's something I enjoy. So I like doing it, and it's been a good business for me. I've got really good employees under me on it that take good real care of me. So it's not a huge headache business, and it's in one of my areas of passions. So I've kind of kept that going. And then I used to just do some investing in speculatory housing and build a couple at a time. And I ended up deciding to take that to the next level. So I went and got my own contractor's license, which I've grown up around all the trades and stuff. So I knew it pretty well. And then I started C. Pritchard Investments, which we build residential speculatory housing, pretty much all with investors. So we partner with investors, build residential houses, and then sell them here. And that's really started taking off well. So I started that last year, and this year we're probably on track to do about 10 houses. And then next year I'm going to try to push it to about 20. It's looking like. So we're getting all the systems in place, and that's been a good push for us. Most of our houses are in about the $1 million range each. So it's been a good push. So that's what keeps me busy.
Cory, I'm gonna be honest. At no point during your last couple minutes of talking did I have any idea what you were gonna say next, but it's all fascinating to me. It was an absolute roller coaster.
I'm not sure I knew what I was going to say next. So
I know, man. Well, like you're doing a lot. This episode is brought to you by 10x Nerds. If you're a business owner doing real revenue, there's a good chance you're overpaying in areas you haven't even looked at. Things like credit card processing, insurance, telecom, and more. 10x Nerds comes in, audits your expenses across 30 plus categories, and finds immediate savings. And here's the kicker: they only get paid if they save you money. It's a complete no brainer. If you want to keep more of what you make, go check them out at 10xnerds.com. This episode is brought to you by Rakowski Law Firm. If you're a business owner or have built a level of wealth, but you don't have your estate plan dialed in, you're exposed. Rakowski Law Firm helps families and business owners protect their assets, avoid probate, and make sure everything transfers exactly how it should. This isn't just paperwork, it's a real strategy to protect your legacy. If you haven't looked at your plan in a while or don't have one, go to rakowskilawfirm.com. Now, my first question with anybody who's a serial guy like yourself is like, do you have really good operators in those different businesses, or does everything still roll up to you? Like, how do you manage three or four things at once like that?
So if you go back to Rise Up Kings, I was the type that was like I was raised under, and I feel like what got me here today is like work hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just go work
Yeah.
harder than anyone else, do it better than everyone else and succeed, you know.
Yeah.
And kind of going through Rise Up Kings, it kind of reset me a little, you know, on stuff. And I've learned, especially with my family, I've got two little boys. I'm married. I've got two boys, a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're getting bigger in sports now and stuff like that, you know. So there were times when I'd spend 150 days a year guiding, you know, and you know, away from the house and stuff. So I've kind of got away from all that and backed it off. And I've kind of learned that, especially as I've got big and started hitting kind of the top walls on these, you know, like our hay business is like $6 million a year revenue. It's not a huge business, but it's got some force behind it, you know. And I've kind of learned as I start to hit these walls that you can't just do everything forever. You know, you got to get the right people in place and stuff. So with some of my companies, like the construction side, I've done really good at setting that up and getting some real good people in place that you know, it's really gonna take off, and it seems like every time I get into something, I've learned a number of things from past failures, you know, and things I should have done different, whether it's computer systems or employees, you know, and how to incentivize them, you know, doing a lot of bonus structures and stuff like that. So with the outfitting business and the construction business, I've got real good at that. The hay business, we're working on with it right now. So we're trying to
Yeah.
kind of revamp it and get everything in place, get the right people in place. But I'm excited about it. It's got a huge room for growth. We just have to capitalize on it. You know, I've got a great partner in it. He's another hard worker, you know, been in the industry a long time, but we've all kind of realized, you know, you only have so many hours in a week. And, you know, with if you're taking the time to work on yourself and your family and your kids and stuff, you know, you have to learn to delegate, which has been a hard one for me because it's a lot easier a lot of times just for me to try to go do it than it is to try to teach someone to do it, you know. And so that's kind of an art that I'm trying to learn, and I'm still working on it. It's not my strongest point yet, but I feel like I'm getting better.
Well, it's gotta, I mean, if you're running three or four things at once, it's gotta be, man. You gotta lean on your team. I love it. The one I'm most interested in is the hay business, dude, because I know literally nothing about it. So you say you
Okay.
know the hay business. What does it entail to have a hay business? I was just looking at your site here, so it looks like you have a new site. The different types of hay, and it
hmm
sounds like you've built on some upsells, you know, fencing, other types of things that you can help with. But what, like, who are we selling hay to? Like, I don't know anything about this space, you know?
So it can be everything. There's huge markets in it. So when I had my first hay business, we would get huge swings in the market. So some years, you know, like typically the hay's grown pretty much in summer, you know, through fall and everything, and then you hit a kind of a little down spot in the winter. And so typically by the time you got to winter, the prices would start going up, you know, and everything supply would start getting lower. People would have it stored, so the prices would start going up. But then sometimes they would just tank, you know, because then sometimes there was too much supply that was out there, and people are realizing, hey, we got too much, and we're gonna have new stuff hitting before long. And so there was huge market volatility when I had my first one. And then now that we're back in the hay business much later, the exports have got big. So it's one of the few things that the United States exports in decent amount, you know, China, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, all of them. And so these container ships coming over from China, you know, they get filled with hay, not completely, obviously, but they get, you know, get the containers filled and then send it back to a lot of these places. So it's something that's actually a decent export. We don't deal in anything in the exports. It's kind of out of our realm and knowledge base, you know, and stuff. There's a few really big companies who kind of take care of that. But what the exports has done is it's made a bigger demand than a supply usually. And so it's kind of kept the prices, the volatility isn't as bad as it was. You know, it's pretty cyclical. It's gonna, you know, they're gonna grow the hay and 8, 10 months out of the year, and in the winter the price is going to go up, and it's kind of like clockwork. There's not a lot of variance to that now. And so we have to pre-buy a lot of our hay to make sure we have the right hay and the quantities and stuff. So we do huge pre-buys when they're growing, and then that helps us throughout the rest of the year. But there's all sorts of different types, different quantities, different bale sizes, different qualities. And it's one thing that kind of the big box guys can't mess with, like a Tractor Supply and those guys, they don't do hay well because every load's different, right? And every farm's different. It's not a widget that can be mass produced. It's grown. And so they've never really been able to figure out, hey, how do we get a supply of it at the right price and the right quality and have it. So it's something that is a little more localized, depending on where you are. It's probably going to be more of a localized market. And it's something that takes a little more expertise than, like we do a ton of farrier supplies too. So we have a showroom here and have like 1,000 different farrier supply, which is horseshoes pretty much. You would never guess there's that many different things, but it actually what we have isn't even that many compared to what's out there. There's some big companies that do that because every horseshoe you buy of that type is going to be the exact same. You don't have to worry about it. But hey, you could take 5 loads that even came out of fields right next to each other and they could be completely different depending on how they were baled and what happened. So it takes a lot more human interaction for the business.
Hmm. What takes up most of your brain space every day? Like you wake up, is it a hay day? Is it a development day? Is it a hunting day? Like what takes up most of your mind, on a daily
I
basis?
laugh, because, the gal who runs my construction company will be sitting in my office sometimes, and we'll be going through stuff, and my phone will start ringing, and I'll start picking up, and the other day, she started cracking up when I got the phone, and she's like, "You realize you switched between 3 different businesses 6 different times in, like, a 30-minute time frame," like, I'd pick the phone up once, and it's talking about, "Hey," and "Oh, I gotta switch to this
Yeah.
call, and it's a hunter that I gotta deal with something there," and then I get a text, and it's someone on a construction site, so I will literally um, I will go back between them all literally by the minute, can change. I've got my office is at the hay yard. And so that's where, at our retail hay yard. So that's where I spend most of my time when I'm in the office. And then I ended up I'm one of those people who's always behind, like, I'm not late, like, to stuff or anything, I'm always punctual, but I've got at any given time, I feel like I'm 3 months behind, and I've kinda had to learn, instead of trying to do a little bit of everything to kind of focus myself, because I might have something really needs done in the hay business, something really needs done on the construction side, and something really needs done on the
Yeah.
outfitting side all at once, and you kinda gotta say, "Okay, I'm gonna do this right now, and I'm gonna do it till it's done," and then, unless a fire comes up and my phone rings, we're going to stick on this and get this task done and then go to the next important thing. And I'm learning to delegate a little better, which has always been a hard thing for me. In the past, that's one of my hardest strong point, struggles is figuring out how to get the right people in place and empower them, hold them accountable, and delegate them stuff to where stuff that someone else has the capability of doing it doesn't fall on my plate.
What's up, everybody? This episode is sponsored by ExitWise. If you're a business owner thinking about selling your company, whether that's now or years down the road, you need to know what your business is actually worth and how to maximize that exit. That's exactly what ExitWise does. They help you prepare, position, and ultimately sell your business by assembling a world-class team of M&A experts around you, guiding you from valuation all the way through closing. If you want to know what your business is really worth and how to increase that number before you sell, go check out exitwise.com and get ahead of it. What do you feel like is going really well in your business, and what's like a pain point or something that's not going so well?
So I would say, I guess I'll
And
give you one
it doesn't
on.
have to be the hay business. It could be any business, by the way.
So on the construction side, our growth is becoming a little bit of a pain point, but I think, like I was telling my wife the other day, we had, I have a few houses that just like the schedules got off on them and they just seem to kind of be a pain and everything. And I really think God did it to me on purpose because I'm bringing on his new superintendent and turning it over to him. For the field supervision stuff, and I think he was showing me the flaws in my schedule, and the flaws in my procedures and stuff like that. That's going to cause him troubles going forward and cause us troubles with expanding, especially at the rate it's looking like on the houses we're going to pick up. So it was really a blessing, and they weren't big problems, but it was just like, oh, we forgot to do this, which needed done at this time point, and so it's really kind of allowed me to step back and say, hey, we got to get our procedures down, we got to get our paperwork correct, on everything. The cost and everything, we're bulletproof on all that, job costing, things like that haven't been problems, but more like, hey, we forgot to check this at this, and so it's going to cost us a week. You know what I mean? While we get it, wait for this to come in or wait for this, and so that's kind of been a big push for me. That's been a hard point that's really turned into a good point, and I'm very thankful it's happened now. because we really worked through it. And with the workload we look like we have coming up, and with bringing on a new superintendent and stuff, it's, you kind of want to have all that stuff ready before. It's an easier lesson to learn now than it would be in 6 months. So I feel very grateful about that. But our growth's been huge. Like I said, we went from last year, I did 2 houses. This year, we're going to do about 10. And next year, I think, based on the investor feedback I'm getting, we're going to probably be in the 20 range. So that's pretty big, growth on if we do 10 million in revenue this year, with 3 employees. That's pretty good run. So that's
That's
kind of
good.
what I'm pushing on. The hay yard is just, we've kind of been a little stagnant on the hay yard for a few years. And what I mean by that is like revenue wise, and we make money, but we should make a little more money. And it's just kind of a lot of cogs, on that and stuff. And so we're just really trying to work out. We've had some computer issues, which we're getting through on stuff. But that's the one that I probably need to devote the most energy to over the next year. That's the one that definitely has the most room for growth and needs the most of my attention. The
Mhm.
outfitting's pretty stable. The outfitting is, I've got good guys. We've been doing it a long time. It's kind of, I don't want to say monotonous because it's fun, it's different, but I mean it's pretty easy. It doesn't take a lot of my
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah. Let's talk about AI for a second. You probably have a pretty good view of different industries and spaces. How are you guys leveraging it, or where do you feel like you should be leveraging it if you're not?
So I've been trying to push AI real heavy for about 4 months right now. And it's been working really good for me. So it saves a lot of my time. I'm going to tell you, I would have to have like an assistant, just doing a bunch of paperwork figuring for me, when even simple stuff like figuring out annualized return on investment for investors, because on a house, it's not like they just pay you all the money at once. You take draws, all this, and this draws out for 6 months and this draws out for two, and so figuring out what their returns were and how all that stuff hits and what your actual profit is and stuff, that used to take manually a lot of time, you know what I mean, in spreadsheets or Excel and stuff. It used to take someone a lot of time to figure that out. Now I can plug it into Chat GBT and in 30 seconds it pumps it out perfect. So it's been a huge save for us so far. I'm probably not as good at using it as I need to be, and it's something that I'm really starting to push a lot more on. And I think over the next year, it's going to be one of our big focuses, because I was even just telling the manager I have for the construction company, like doing our schedules and stuff. Cause we kind of know, hey, this, this trade drywall, they're going to take X amount of days roughly from start to finish, and then anymore, a lot of the construction trades around here don't end up working weekends. So you got to pull the weekends out of the schedule, and figure out work days and then push everyone down the schedule. And hey, so-and-so's late. So now we got to push the whole schedule. And I was telling her, I was like, I think we can get AI to do this in like, a tenth of the time we spend doing it and stuff. So we're going to push on it hard. We use a lot of, I'm trying to get better with like Google Docs and things like that. So we're running everything on iPads for the construction company, and I can literally be standing on a job site and pull up any piece of information on the whole house, pull up a picture of what the cabinets look like and what the backsplash is there and the exact, and mark it out on a wall while I'm standing there.
Yeah.
So there's huge, the technology side's gonna be the make or break. Honestly, that's gonna be the in on, like, the hay yard. I think it's gonna help us a lot on the ordering, and inventory management, things like that. Um, so I don't feel like I'm where I need to be on it, but I'm very interested in pushing it and very interested in learning more. It still baffles me. Someone sent me a video the other day, one of my guides, of, um a hunter who'd killed an animal, and so it was a picture with the animal, and they sent a video and they plugged it into AI, and all of a sudden this animal just stands up and turns and takes off walking away from and it was like a 30-second deal, and it looks perfect. Like, you can't tell it's fake, which worries me a little, because I'm like, how are we going to know what's real anymore? You know what I mean? Half the stuff you see, Joe can make on AI in a minute, like, how do we know what's going to be real and what's not anymore?
I love it. It's so interesting, man. So I went to Ruck a year ago, Rise of Kings with the refinery, and one of the things God told me so clear was to create freedom for business owners. And so we do that a couple ways. One, overseas staffing, like executive assistants for busy guys like you, and two is AI. And what's crazy to me is because of Rise Up Kings, like a year ago, I had no freaking idea what a takeoff was or an estimator or any of that stuff. No clue. Now, I feel like that is one of the most ripe things for AI is like things like estimation, low level things like logistics, bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff. And it's been really cool because what Rise of Kings has done is it given me this network of guys with all these different industries. Like, there's no way I would be connected to someone that owns a hay business if it wasn't
Uh-huh.
for this network. And I see all sorts of applications for how these tools could be used. But I love that because you and I are like brothers from another mother. Like, I've got like 6 things going on. AI, I believe it's not a tool. Like, no one has to get fired, no one has to get replaced. It's just a way to actually leverage your existing staff. If you have the right person in the right seat, like your number two at your construction company, it allows her to do more, right? And leverage her capacity. It's like, what business owner wouldn't want to turn his best sales guy into like 6 sales guys, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And so
Well, and I don't
yeah,
think it's gonna eliminate people. I think it's gonna allow, like you said, it's gonna allow someone who maybe doesn't have a certain skill set to be able to function in a job like that,
yes,
that'll probably pay
yes.
more, you know?
Yes, 100%, 100%. Okay, so you and I know each other through Rise of Kings. I always like to get a little soundbite or testimonial or something on how it's changed your life. What are a couple ways that Rise of Kings has, changed your life, business, ministry, whatever areas it's changed you the most?
So it's been huge to me. It's been so I went April of last year, so I've been almost a year when it and I did the mastermind. So we've been involved in that. I stay on a lot of the calls and everything frequently. But when I was went to Rise Up Kings, I was if there's 80 hours worth of work to do, you work 80 hours this week, and like I can remember like a huge one, social media. I didn't like partake in social media, but I'd dumb out scroll Instagram. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
get home tired, don't want to do anything, and I'm like, oh, I just don't want to think, and I'd do it for hours, instead of spending time with my family and stuff. And so for me, it's really been a reset of what's important, especially going back to the 4 pillars, faith, family, fitness, and finance. You got to be good at them all. You know what I mean? You can't just pick one or two and be like, oh, this is my life. You gotta really hit them all. So it's really made me concentrate a lot more on trying to set my businesses up where they're not just me. Like in the past, my businesses are me, like I'm the center of it. And if I'm not there, stuff's not going right. And so it's really got me trying to move to, hey, I only want to work 40 or 50 hours a week. I don't want to work 80 hours a week, but I want my companies to flourish with me doing that, and I want to empower other people to do it. And one of the best things I make the joke because I don't know if it's the best thing I ever told my boys or the worst, but when I came home, I can remember at Rise Up Kings, they told us, they're like, man, if you get home and you had to work a 14-hour day and you're tired and your boys say, hey, let's go play baseball. My boys love baseball. They're like, you get your ass off the couch and you go play baseball. I mean, that's what you do. And so I told them that. I can remember when I got back and man, they still use it. I'll be sitting there, I'll be like, I'm tired. And they'll be like, Dad, at Rise Up Kings, they told you to go play baseball with us. And I'm like, you're right, let's go, and head to the backyard. And it's not that I mean, I always spent time with my kids, and had a have a close relationship with them. But now, like kids, wife, especially, that sort of stuff, like you got to make it a priority, and
Yeah.
I was never, I was never not fit, but I didn't work out a lot, and me and my wife now we get up at 3 or 4 o'clock pretty much every morning, work out. We leave for the office at 5:30 every morning, both of us. And luckily, both my in-laws and my parents are very active with the kids, so they take the kids each 2 mornings a week and take them to school for us and stuff. But it's the intentionality. I have a whole different intentionality than I used to in life. Like if you just tell me to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to work out, I might do it once a week. Now we don't miss. Me and my wife, we don't miss it. We eat better, we work out harder, we spend more time together, more time with the kids, things like that. And honestly, I'm probably almost as productive at work and a lot less of the time, because I don't let myself get sidetracked and I'm just like, hey, I'm only here for 5 more hours today or whatever it is, and so I got to get stuff done, and it's really helping me to start relying on other people better, which in the long run is going to be that's the key. You know what I mean? I mean, you're only one person, so you're only as good as the people you have with you.
Amen. Amen. Well, Corey, the good word, man. If people want to learn more about who you are and what you do, where can they go?
So like with the hay business, we have a pretty good website for the hay business. For the outfitting and construction side, we don't have websites for them right now just because the outfitting is pretty much all word of mouth for us. But you can give me a call anytime or holler at us, figure out we can let you know what goes on. We appreciate appreciate the time to talk to you and everything.
And I was just looking at so it's heyplusfarms.com is the
Yes, sir.
website, guys. Don't go anywhere. I want to keep chatting, but thanks so much for coming on the podcast, guys. Go check out Cory, what he's up to. It's really cool, all the different things he has going on. And you got me thinking about going on a trip here to do some hunting, even though I'm the least savvy hunter you've probably ever met. So that sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate the time talking to you.